JB here. JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Monday, February 23rd, 9:17 on this fine morning. Talk quick about the market, some names I'm looking at. Go from there. I think I'm on. Yeah, I'm all set here. S&P off the lows, the overnight lows, at least the futures set to open about 0.3% to the downside. NASDAQ down about a little bit less than 0.5%. The software names are selling off. Take a look at the IGV. ETF is lower in the pre-market. It's setting up to be another interesting week. I keep using this analogy of a swimmer trying to get acclimated to the water, the cold water. It's kind of how I felt like last week. Felt like I was getting more accustomed to the water on Friday. Hopefully, there'll be more opportunities and I can get some conviction. But this week, still a lot of things going on. NVDA earnings, the headliner. So Wednesday after the close, we have PPI data on Friday, and then there's other earnings, Home Depot and Lowe's. So we already had Walmart. So I don't know how much that'll move markets much. And then we have the whole backdrop of the tariff situation, right? The Supreme Court ruled against the tariffs on Friday. No surprise there. I think the market was at the pricing in like an 80% probability that that was going to happen. And now it's like, what is the ramifications, or what does that mean for markets, right? You saw the reaction on Friday. Uh, some of the names that you think would have impacts from the tariff related names like the RH start to strong moves to the upside, and then those kind of gave the gains back at the end of the day. But the market held up pretty well. And then over the weekend, after the 10% across the board tariff was announced, and now it's up to 15%. I was hoping we're going to get out of these tariff tweets and updates that seem to happen every couple of days and weeks through the spring and summer in regards to China and the EU and Japan and even India. And here we are back to doing that. But anyway, I said on the rant on Friday, I think if there's anything that came out of Friday's ruling by the Supreme Court, it's certainty, right? The market doesn't like uncertainty. And now that we have that kind of ruling out of the way, now the market can kind of, understand, okay, here, you can't have this 150% tariff trade war situation going on with China. So we'll see how this week plays out. I've been talking about the last couple of weeks, the market kind of having its training wheels taken off, and we can see if the market can trade on its own merits. The economy's doing relatively well. We had the GDP number surprise. So if we had no ruling on the Supreme Court on Friday, where would the market have gone? Would we've been down 1-2%? We don't know. We won't get that answer. But maybe if the market didn't like that GDP data, maybe we're in the start of a meltdown. I'm still cautiously optimistic. I think the SPY 700 is going to happen. A lot's going to happen, but Wednesday is going to determine a lot of that. Right? NVIDIA is going to have it's going to be a monster report. We know it's going to be beating a raise, and then Jensen's always going to spin his very enthusiastic remarks on his company and the economy. So I don't think that's going to be anything different. Just how does the market react? So hopefully, maybe that's the end of the software sell-off, right? That's kind of like what I would like to see. Take a look at Adobe this morning. It's just names. It's every time you look, it's like, oh, maybe it's going to start to bounce, and then Adobe's right at lows, 254 here. So maybe this is the week. All right, so that's kind of overall market. I'm trying to think of some of the other catalysts, but there's still a lot of earnings, so I'll talk about those in a minute, or some of the names. Only 10 minutes here to the open, but take a look at the SPY 677, 676. That's kind of like the line in sand. Got down to that in the middle of January, end of January, start of February. Don't want to see that break. I think if we break that handle, probably 655 on the SPY. So I don't think that's a high possibility of an outcome, but you got to be open to scenarios if they present themselves. So that's what I'll be watching. On the flip side, 686 or so was that line that I had from back in December. Got up to that, broke through that yesterday. On Friday. So we'll see if we can get back up to a red to green would be a phenomenal outcome here today. All right, overall markets. Just quick on individual names. Obviously, I'll talk about Corning. I was trying to put together another kind of get my thoughts around it because most of the free time I had over the weekend is trying to find articles and research comparison, look at other names in the space and possibility of the deals. What does that mean for their fundamentals and the PE ratio, their earnings, and their what does that do for their cash position? And so all these different things you look at. And to me, so I look at a couple different scenarios on the table for GLW, right? And one is that it's going to get some FOMO and have a mini SanDisk move, right? A move. When I looked at SanDisk, I mean, when it was $100, I didn't think it was going to go $700, maybe $200-300. So obviously that overshot. When I look at GLW, I think if it has some kind of mini SanDisk move, it's $200, right? I think even if it doesn't have a mini SanDisk move, maybe it's 175. So that's one scenario, and the other scenario is it has a bigger FOMO, gets to like $300. Uh, it's a $113 billion company. I was doing the math right at $200. I think it's a $171 billion company. At 250, it's a $200 billion company. So that's kind of like top line, easy, fun, easy things to look at. You start digging in, it's the PE ratio, right? I think it's an 83 PE ratio, at least for 2026. So if you start putting on these meta deals, and it was $6 billion deal. Is there going to be two? I mean, it sounded like when the CEO was talking about an earnings call, it sounded like multiple, right? So I think that's pretty much a foregone conclusion. There's at least two deals that are sized around $6 billion for, and who knows what the years look like, right? So it's just how many deals? Is it three or four? And then if there's more than two, the PE ratio starts to dip under 30, right? So if it's similar metrics, around $6 billion, you start factoring what their optics business does, margin wise, things like that. Then you make the case that it's at least a $200 stock, right? So that was some of it. And then the other things I'm looking, there's things that I think people didn't that is kind of like people are missing, right? And some of it, of course, the easy thing to see is that when you have this build out in the data centers, fiber optics is front and center, right? That's the easy thing to see. And then the harder thing to see, and people miss some of this, is that these servers eventually are probably going to go to fiber optics outside of copper, right? Especially as demand, the speed, things like that, right? So that's one tailwind. And now I'm looking over the weekend at drones, and I don't know if the drones are tethered by fiber optics. So there's more things I have to look into that, but I don't know what that total addressable market is. But to me, it just creates this. I talked about the tariffs creating certainty for the markets. To me, this situation with fiber optics, it creates uncertainty, the uncertainty of demand, the uncertainty of capacity, right? And I think some of what happened with Meta, and you see some of these deals that these companies do now in the AI space, is like Meta doesn't know how big everything is they're gonna need, but they're trying to get capacity, right? So the $6 billion deal with Corning is a capacity deal, some of it, right? There's no details. You just gotta kind of like look and say, okay, this is probably some of it, right? So what does that demand look like? And then the supply side. So like this creates another situation. And Micron had earnings back in December, I think was like the moment that just things exploded, because Micron came on as pretty much saying like infinite demand, right? They're not going to be able to meet supply for a long, long time. So I don't know when or if the fiber optic sector gets to that, but if we're anywhere close to it, I think the market will start pricing in way before that happens. So, all right. So, in a nutshell, I'm trying to think of scenarios, and to me, if there is some FOMO, I don't want to miss this, right? Because I still think it's not a name that people are looking at and say, hey, this can have kind of like a similar move that we saw with SanDisk. So, I might look to get some other crazy strikes. The April 180s looked interesting. Friday, thankfully, finally got in a position. I think it was 128 the open, 129. Got those March strikes. Then once it started to break over 130, got the February strikes. The thing is, the premiums were expensive. It was almost like some of the move was being priced in. So made a little. Morgan Stanley just came out with an adjustment on the price target. Did I miss that? Anyway, all right. So that's Corning. Don't be surprised I add some more April strikes. The thing is, I'm gonna cover this with cost. So I'm gonna take some of either the March strikes off or some of the Februarys off at the open, cover that, and then ride the rest. And then hopefully get some FOMO. And then just to add some more fuel to the fire, it's got a bull flag setting up. So you talk about the bull flag, you do the math, right? So the math goes from, I mean, you can make the case from $85 all the way up to 130. So you're talking a $45 mass divided by two, that's another $20. So you're talking 155, 160 just on a bull flag breakout. So, all right, that's corny. Just quick on some other names. First solar reports after the close Wednesday. So SolarEdge, Enphase, obviously I've been looking to play those for upside and trading in and out of the calls. First Solar, the premiums are expensive, but the 280s look interesting. I might look to get some 280s today, ride them for premium build into earnings, hopefully get some out to cover costs before the close Wednesday. With that being said, I forgot to mention you got POTUS's his address, right? So he's I don't know if he's going to talk about when he does a State of Union address. Typically, presidents have agendas that maybe they do some announcements that move sectors. Sometimes it's in energy, infrastructure, military, but it seems like POTUS has said pretty much any kind of news event or release that could be announced at the State of Union, I think is already out there. So I don't know if he's going to make any mind-boggling or market moving announcements, but definitely something to pay attention to Tuesday evening, State of Union. But anyway, with that being said, solar is always one of those names that's under the microscope in regards to subsidies, Uh, you look at what's going on, to me with the tariff situation, right? China, a huge headwind for First Solar because China is able to manufacture solar wafers at a I don't even know what the percentage is, but the cost to actually manufacture the wafers is extremely less expensive than in the U.S. And so First Solar has that. The current administration's look to make things in the U.S., the factories and all that. So anyway, in a nutshell, don't be surprised to get some First Solar calls before earnings. And I went too long on that GLW rant. So that's that. Serve Robotics. I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about that. Zoom reports earnings after close Wednesday. If any other week for earnings, I would be looking to get some more Zoom calls, but it's like an environment that even if your company doesn't have much in the way of the software side of business being disrupted, just because you're in that same sector, it's probably going to be a tough earnings for Zoom. I don't know what they could do to really get the ball going, as opposed to the CEO coming out with some updates in regards to their investment, right? I don't know if that could set the stock on fire. Roblox still waiting for this one to break out. And, unfortunately, take a look on Friday. It sold off. No, I didn't see any catalyst, no news, all the way down to $60. Back up to 62 here. At some point, that one breaks out. Same with Shopify, still watching that one. And then obviously Reddit. All right, that's sorry about the rant there. I'm going to try and come out with my bull piece either later today or this afternoon, but don't be surprised. I'm a little more aggressive getting some GLDW calls at the open. Let's have a great day. Rock and roll.